20 years, gone in a single phone call. When David started working at the factory, he was 19 years old, wearing steel toe boots, a faded lunchbox, and carrying $12 in his bank account. The building was ugly, loud, and unbearably hot during the summer, but he loved it immediately. To him, the factory represented stability. It meant food on the table, rent paid on time, and a chance to build a future that looked different from the life his parents had lived. David grew up watching his father struggle between temporary jobs. Some months were good, others were brutal. There were winters when the heat barely worked, and nights when dinner came from canned food stretched as far as possible. His parents worked hard, but hard work alone never seemed to be enough to move them forward. He promised himself that once he found a stable career, he would never let it go. So when the factory hired him full-time, he treated the opportunity like winning the lottery. He arrived early every morning. He stayed late without complaining. He volunteered for overtime while everyone else rushed home. Managers loved him because he never caused problems. Co-workers respected him because he carried more than his share of the workload. If David were scheduled, the job would get done. At 24, he married his high school sweetheart, Elena. They rented a tiny apartment with thin walls and unreliable plumbing, but they were happy. David worked extra shifts so they could save money faster. He kept telling her the same thing: "Just give me a few years. Things will get easier." And eventually, they did. At 28, they bought a modest house near the edge of town. At 31, their first daughter was born. 2 years later came their son. Every important memory in David's adult life connected back to that factory. The overtime covered hospital bills. The holiday bonuses are paid for Christmas presents. The factory became more than employment. It became an identity. Whenever someone asked what he did for a living, David answered proudly, "I've been with the company for almost 20 years. He believed companies protected people who sacrificed for them. He believed hard work created security, and for a long time, reality appeared to prove him right. Then small changes started happening. Nothing dramatic at first. A supervisor quietly disappeared. Departments merged. Break room conversations became tense whenever management walked by. People whispered about budget cuts, restructuring, and overseas production. But David ignored most of it. Factories always had rumors. Workers complained constantly. Fear spread easily in places where thousands of people depended on one paycheck. David stayed focused on his work. Until the morning, unfamiliar executives arrived. They wore polished shoes and expensive watches that looked strange against the grease-stained factory floors. They walked through departments, taking notes while employees pretended not to stare. 3 weeks later, David's phone rang at 6:12 in the morning. His shift started at 7. Half asleep, he answered, expecting a scheduling change. Instead, he heard his supervisor breathing heavily on the other end. "David," the man said quietly, "don't come in today." David sat upright immediately. Why? There was a pause. Then came the sentence that destroyed 20 years of certainty. "We're shutting down operations effective immediately." David blinked at the wall beside his bed. "What are you talking about?" Another silence. "It's over." Over. One word erased 2 decades of loyalty. David waited for more explanation, but none came. The supervisor sounded exhausted, almost embarrassed, like he hated delivering the news. Eventually, the call ended, leaving David staring into silence while sunlight slowly crept through the curtains. His wife walked into the room moments later. "What happened?" David opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because deep down, the problem wasn't only money. Something larger had collapsed. For 20 years, David knew exactly who he was. He was dependable. He was productive. He was the provider who kept everything together. The factory gave structure to his life. Every morning had a purpose. Every week followed the direction. Now that the structure was gone, the first few days felt unreal. Co-workers flooded group chats searching for answers. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some people talked about severance packages, while others desperately searched online for new jobs. David tried staying optimistic. He updated his resume, contacted old co-workers, and promised Elena everything would work out. The mortgage payment still came, the electricity bill still came, groceries still cost money. Life showed no sympathy for unemployment. Managers half his age asked corporate questions in cheerful voices. He had spent 20 years mastering one environment while the world quietly transformed around him. Companies demanded digital skills he never learned because he assumed his career was secure. Months passed. Savings disappeared faster than expected. Retirement accounts were touched. Credit card balances climbed higher each week. Stress entered the house slowly at first, then all at once. Elena started picking up additional shifts at the hospital. Their daughter stopped asking for new clothes after overhearing late-night conversations about bills. David became quieter. Some mornings, he sat at the kitchen table long after everyone left, drinking cold coffee while staring at unpaid statements spread across the table. How could 20 years mean so little? One afternoon, David drove past the factory for the first time since the shutdown. The parking lot was empty. The gates were chained shut. Wind pushed trash across the cracked pavement where hundreds of workers once parked every day. David sat inside his truck, staring at the building for almost an hour. That was the moment something finally broke inside him. Not his confidence, not even his hope. An illusion. David realized the company never loved him back. To executives reviewing spreadsheets in distant offices, workers were numbers attached to labor costs. When profits dropped, those numbers disappeared. It did not matter how many birthdays employees missed or how many overtime shifts they accepted. Business remained business. That truth hurt more than unemployment itself. For months, David felt angry about it. Angry at management, angry at politicians, angry at himself for believing hard work alone created safety. But eventually, anger turned into clarity. He began understanding something most people realize too late. Depending entirely on one company is dangerous. Real security comes from adaptability, from learning new skills continuously, from saving aggressively during good years instead of assuming income will last forever, from building an identity beyond a job title. Slowly, David started rebuilding. He took free online classes at night to improve his computer skills. He accepted temporary jobs even when pride told him not to. He learned how to budget carefully. He sold things sitting unused in the garage. He stopped pretending everything was fine and started confronting reality honestly. The process was exhausting, but little by little, progress returned. Almost a year after losing the factory job, David found steady work with a smaller company. The salary was lower, and the position lacked the comfort he once enjoyed, but it gave him something important: momentum. More importantly, the experience changed how he viewed work forever. He stopped believing employers guaranteed security. He started spending more time with his family instead of chasing endless overtime. He understood now that companies could replace workers within days, but families carried the emotional cost for years. One evening, his teenage son asked whether he missed the factory. David thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but losing it taught me who I really was." His son frowned, confused. David smiled faintly. "I thought that building made me important. Turns out I was important before the building ever existed." That realization changed everything. Most people think disasters only happen to reckless individuals. They imagine financial collapse belongs to gamblers, lazy workers, or irresponsible people making terrible choices. But maybe stories like David's matter for another reason too. Maybe losing everything reveals what actually matters. Because once the illusion disappeared, David finally stopped building someone else's future while neglecting his own. He finally understood survival depended less on loyalty and more on constant personal growth. And for the first time in years, he truly felt free. If this story meant something to you, like the video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories about work, money, and the realities most people ignore.